Hey, what's up, guys? Hope everyone's doing good. I'm actually back from vacation. It was a Mother's Day getaway, real quick. So, hope everybody had a great time with their family. Was able to tell their mom they love them. Just spend time with the family members. I know this is a big part and a thing I'm trying to do a little bit more of is be present with people that we love as we're getting older. So, I apologize that I was not here today for Monday, but I wanted to do a recap real quick. From some of the trades we took on Thursday and Friday. It's going to be a lengthy video. I'll try to run through it as quickly as possible. But first, wanted to start off with BABA. I think this is one of the first ones that we took. This was a swing. I'm trying to do a little bit more of swing trades. I think the market is providing some great continuations, especially to the long side. We're seeing a lot of breakouts on high volume with pullbacks into EMAs, support, and just really clean price action. So just wanted to review BABA first, then we'll look at PDD. I think I took Disney as well, and then we'll kind of go from there into more of the intraday trades that I took on Friday. So with BABA, we actually ended up trading this day here, right above my cursor, on 511. A massive day overall. Obviously, if you guys can see in the upper left, it went about 6% on the day. Just a huge win. But I wanted to talk about why I took it, and you guys can clearly see, right, this green box was my target for it to pull back into. Somewhat of a bigger range, which is why I'll show you guys in a second the actual strike I took. But I wanted to buy some time on this name. Because on these pullbacks, what ends up happening is you'll sometimes get a pullback that's deeper than you may like. It might take a little bit longer with some consolidation before it ends up going. So I wanted to get some time, and I think I went a month out. Had I taken 0 DTEs, these things would have been a huge, huge win. I think the 11th was a Thursday. But really what I was looking for right after this print, because we in pre-market, we saw a gap above, right? And I'll show you guys here on the Discord, right? So we end up going here. Let's scroll up just a second. So in pre-market, it might be a little bit blurry for you guys, but we were essentially gapped up over this 84 level, 84.5. And I wanted to look for a pullback back down to this range here, which is that green line. Either that or hold or break above the blue, right, which was 85.70. That was actually, if we go back to the chart here in a second, that was actually the resistance of the previous gap down, right? Bulls tried to break it back above that level, they failed, and then ultimately it resulted in that bear flag breakdown. So I was looking for either a pullback to 84 flat, right around that range, or for it to break out above 85.20 or 70. What we ended up looking at too on the weekly, I think this is the weekly. Yeah, we kind of had this inverse head and shoulders set up right here, where we had the left shoulder, we had the head here, right shoulder, and then it pulled down one more time, and it was testing almost the bottom of this range, right? A very, very simple risk. In my opinion, right? We had a very low volume sell off, or just the weeklies in general were low volume. And then the spreads were tiny, guys. I think for the weekly spreads, it was about a $3 or $4 range. So virtually no pressure now from bears. They weren't able to push price or extend it as far as they used to. You guys can clearly see the difference from how long these candles are compared to the ones down here. And then if we go to the daily as well, it looked a little bit accumulative. Right, where we kind of had low volume at the sell-offs and then high volumes at the bottom of the candles with low spread, meaning that there's big buyers jumping in at the lows, right, and then very little and low volume sell-off at the tops. So I just really like the setup overall. And then obviously during this time, if you guys go back on SPY's chart, SPY was trading in a range, and I really didn't like how the market was moving from, trading the indices, looking at Tesla, Meta. Things just felt a little forced, and we weren't getting a lot of continuation. And I did see some flow on BABA, PDD, and then JD as well. So it did spark my interest to start looking at other sectors. Now, if we go back to the actual chart here, right, this is what I was looking for. This should be a little bit more clear. This was the resistance that I was looking for a break and base over. Or if we got the pullback, right, it was right in this range. It was kind of like the top of this wick. I wanted to initially tie it into the close of this little small candle here. But I ended up extending it just a little bit down to the previous day high, right, this wick up here, the very peak of that. So that was my 84.5 pullback that I was looking for into this little small zone, right? So now if we go to the actual chart itself, we can go to like a 5, reset really quickly. You guys will see right off the bat, it was almost perfect, right? Where we ended up getting an initial wick down into our zone, right? And then a wick back up, indicating that there are buyers there. Candle ended up closing in a hammer. And then sure enough, right, it kind of took off from there. But I ended up taking the trade in this little zone here. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, the reason I bought time is because sometimes this will actually pull down a little bit further than you would like, right? You'd get a pull down, right? Maybe a lower high, and then it breaks a little bit under your level. You start to get a little bit uncomfortable, especially if you're in a weekly contract. You can go down very, very quickly on names like BABA or PDD, just because they are less traded, so the volume is less. And then when it comes to less volume traded, typically your options contracts are going to have a larger spread between the bid ask, right? So you may get filled at like $90 at the ask, right? And then somebody, this price breaks down, then someone will try to bid in at 70, and if they get that filled, you're instantly down $20, right? Whereas on SPY, the bid ask spread's like $1. So if you get in at like 90 and somebody bids at 89, and that gets filled, you're only down by $1, right? So this name can be a little bit sketchy to trade at times. So I do like to buy time when it comes to things outside of tech, or if I'm trying to swing or something like that. It's just safer to buy time. And then you have to think about the consolidation aspect as well. So there's a very high probability this could have wicked down into this level, consolidated for a little bit, if not all day, right? Or maybe just get a pop to like 85.70, come back down, trade in this range. So it was just smart, in my opinion, to get an extra month on it. But yeah, we ended up getting our wick that we wanted, candle close. I ended up starting my position down here, and then it broke out pretty easy, right? And then milking this trade was relatively simple as well. You guys can see too, I talk about it a lot, riding the 9 EMA. Risk could be the 21, but we were literally trying to carry this from 85.7, technically 84 in this range, right? This little zone if we got the fill here, but if you didn't, 85.7, we were trying to trade it up to 88, roughly 90, right? We were kind of looking for that range. So very comfortably, we were able to kind of watch this move up, use the 9 to stay in the trade. You can obviously scale as well, however you'd like. But target ultimately was this 88.38. I did think if we got above that level, we could easily have seen 90 to 92. But this was a very, very simple trade. I don't need to go too in depth with it. If we go back to the Discord here really quickly, I'll show you guys essentially, kind of the trade itself. Ended up getting into Disney as well. I'll review that one. But yeah, 14%, 22, 30, and I think I ended up finishing the trade off right around 60%. I think I kept a little bit left over. I think that's when we started getting up into this range near the triple top. So I was pretty much done with the trade. Now, ultimately I was looking for this on the daily, right? Let's go back really quick. You guys can see this was a clear resistance right around this range here. This is where my initial target was, trying to trade this from red line or the green from there, right? So I would say that's about a 4 or 5 point move, trying to get a zone-to-zone trade. We ended up getting that, and obviously broke back down to our level. Pretty low volume sell-off, so this will tie into this swing trade that I ended up taking going into this week. But this is a pretty big pivot here at 88.34, right? And then if we end up breaking through this level, I think it's a very, this is what my ultimate target was. I think it's a very easy move to 89.64. I would just say 90. But this orange line and the blue line would be, orange is 200 MA, and then the 50 is going to be my blue. So we're basically at target. Who knows, this definitely could break through and start to trade its way back to 92.13. You guys can see this range does have a little bit of volume that's been traded in this spot, but more recently, I would say from like right here to present day, hasn't been traded as much in this range. This had a lot of consolidation here. We can see it's traded a little bit over here, but we'll see how it ends up going. I would say that it does reject somewhere in this range. But once again, right, we have to think about larger time frames, and that's why I really like this trade, is you have the backing of the weekly inverse head and shoulders. And really, this could get that move straight through, this 88.34, get a move to 92. I'd expect it does trade lower than this right here. right? This is 105.05. I'd expect it does stop. If anything, let's say it breaks out, it's going to stop somewhere right around here and complete like another lower high. I don't think it gets anywhere near 105. I'd be very surprised if it does. But that was essentially my trade plan for this. And then the reason, and I'll show you guys PDD really quickly, but if we go look at SPY on this day here, let's go to like a 5. Where were we at? We were at 511, right? So you guys notice how strong this was right off the bat. Of course, we had the wick down into our zone, finished in a hammer, and it was just trending all day with our EMAs. If we go look at SPY from 511, right, you guys can see, I mean, pretty range bound, didn't have much action. It sold off the open, which was a lot harsher than the Chinese names. And then it just really stuck right around the high a day. Really didn't break out. It had a small push above, which might have faked some people out, traded back to the low. And that's been the theme, right? And this is what I've been trying to avoid on SPY and why I haven't traded as much. We've had about 21 days or so. It looks like more, honestly, but 21 plus days of trading in the same range over and over and over again without much follow through. And I just really haven't been liking how it's traded, right? It's a lot of risk that you can put on the table, especially if you do break into your impulses and you trade that 0 DTE, you go super heavy with size. You're subjecting yourself to a lot of risk and potential reversals that have been happening over and over again. And we've seen it right for the entirety of this this session. So let's go ahead and look at PDD because I did add that on the same exact day, just based off the relative strength in the Chinese stocks. Now PDD's chart was a little bit different, but kind of the same, right? Where we ended up trading at 511, or yeah, right here on this big candle here. And what we were looking for initially was a break through the top of this trading range here. I would say like roughly right around here, right? Because it kind of ties into the lows of this candle, kind of the resistance here. We obviously have a wick on this day here on 510. And we had found a nice weekly low at 59.63. And what I wanted to see initially was a break above this, right? And if we can get a pullback onto 61.5, I was comfortable taking that. However, I had jumped in BABA at that same exact time. So what I ended up looking for was a simple break of this previous support here, which had become resistance at 62.75. Now we got a clean candle through that, and I want to show you guys really quickly how I took this trade, right? And it was very, very simple. This is what I talk about, guys, when I talk about a break and then a base on it, or break and retest, break and pullback, whatever you guys want to call it. It's the importance of not really chasing breakouts, because what ends up happening when you break past a level, majority, let's say you're going long in this situation, which we did. When it breaks somebody's level, what they'll end up doing is trying to double down, or they'll try to short it and try to pull it right back to their level, right, or their entry, and then get out as close to break even as possible. That's what their goal is, and that's why these things do pull back, is they try to get out break even, and then what ends up happening is they cover, or they close out their positions, or whatever you guys want to call it, and then you have that buying pressure from them closing or covering their short, and then you have buyers jumping in at that level as well, because resistance is now support. So that's essentially what a pullback is, or a break in base. And there are times too where it'll break above, and these guys will double down and they'll try to short it back under, and there's a weak bid and buyers can't hold this level, and it becomes a fake breakout, and then these guys will get scared and close out their long position, and that's where you have these big flushes that end up happening. So it's always important to watch your volume, watch how candles close, and just be patient. Let candles close before you end up, jumping in. It's very important that we get that confirmation. But I really like the setup, right? We ended up getting this very, very large candle that pushed us right to the resistance. This candle tried, right? It didn't necessarily close how I would have liked. We did get a shooting star here, or kind of like a gravestone, honestly. But the secondary candle after that one, this one right here, had very, very low volume, right? And especially after this candle here, which is very high volume, you would have liked to have seen a reversal occur after this high volume print. However, next candle, very low volume and a close above our level. What does that mean? It means that there was low effort and low result. What is the result that these guys are trying to get on this candle? Was a push down, at least back down to VWAP or the mid candle, whatever it may have been, just something away from the zone, right? 62.75, and it did not happen. This is where I ended up taking the trade right around. I think I took it a little bit later, if I'm not, if I'm being honest. I think it was 7:55. That was, what is that? 10 o'clock, 10:55 my time. We can go look at it really quickly in the Discord. 7:58. Maybe it was this exact time. Yeah, maybe it does sync up. I have no idea. All I know is I took it right around that level, so it had to have been right here. So I took this, and I actually played this one a little bit more aggressively, seeing how strong Baba was and JD and some of the Chinese names. So I took this at 40 cents for a weekly expiration. I tried to bid in because we wanted to get that pullback, which I think we got right around here. Somewhere in this range, right off the wick down into 62.75. And then sure enough, right, it started to work very nicely along with Baba. These were the runners that I had. They went 10%, 15, and I think what I ended up doing was I trimmed this entire position because Baba was the big winner. I didn't want to go super heavy in PDD. Also, I think Baba was ahead of PDD in terms of price and range that it had moved. So I didn't want to overextend myself on something that may have reached a top, if that makes sense. So I think I ended up closing these full. Yeah, like 35. I would say, yeah, 35%. I don't want to round or anything like that. I think I closed a majority of these. I got down to 2 cons, so at 35% or so. This was at 11:10. So I pretty much rode these up all day. Yeah, I closed at the top here, which was 65.70. And remember, I've been trying to focus a lot, especially now that I'm not overwhelmed with 0DTE, SPY, and the liquidity traps that are happening on that. I'm able to trade a little bit more zone to zone and be more comfortable. I've been taking about 10 cons or so, sometimes 15, sometimes 5, just to feel out trades and feel out the tape and try to trade it level to level. So this once again was a level to level trade. It was a break, pullback onto 62.75, which was our resistance, and then we can switch this back over here really quickly. So breakout, pull back onto our resistance, and then it ended up moving up, pulled back, moved up, and then once again, just ride your EMAs. And then we were trading this from zone here at 62.75 to zone here at 65.70. Daily, remember this was a pretty simple trade and straightforward. Let's go here. 62.75, we were just trying to get it back up to the top right around here. 66, I think it was 65.7. Honestly, I'm not too sure how I got that level. Let's go to the weekly. Might have been a weekly level. Honestly, I have no idea how I got it to that level. I think I should have had it somewhere around here. I think I had it. Yeah, that's where I should have had it. 69.98, basically $70. And then if we go back to the chart, and I think this is why I actually did swing some runners. Yeah, okay, so it pulled up and just slowly made its way up. I think that line was just my risk for a new trade that I was making, so I apologize. But yeah, that's why I swung 2 contracts, and then I had some Baba contracts as well. As always, though, with these names, whenever you get these big moves, if we go back to Baba, what we want to look for is that pullback where we can potentially add on. So this right here was a great opportunity where we had this big volume. I wouldn't say massive, but you did have a high volume push above previous resistance, and then it hits a new resistance, which you want to keep your eye on it for, and a lot of people take their eye off because they had a quote-unquote winning trade, which is awesome, but there's still money that can be milked out of these. So this ended up getting a pullback, and it once again tested this level here at 84.5, didn't close below, actually closed slightly above. This is a good opportunity, especially with low volume here. Once again, you could, if it had a couple more bars, I would be comfortable with this being a flag that I can trade, but just a simple break, pullback, or retest off that same level, and then take the trade again. Keep the same risk here. Of course, you made your money on the previous trade, so don't go as heavy, but you can always just grab a contract or two just to feel it out and potentially milk the same trade, right? This 85, I would say, just rounding back to 88, and now you have a potential breakout above this level. Of course, we know that the MAs are slightly above on Baba, but if we go to PDD, once again, same exact thing. Okay, and this is why I kept those contracts, and you can always look to add on your winning position if you keep a couple runners, or you can do, I've talked about it in a few videos, the contract roll, where I'll take, let's say I get into 85 calls, yeah, make 80%, and I only have 2 contracts left. What I can do, if I think there's a continuation and a pullback, I can just add 87 calls now. Right now, those cons are cheaper. I could use some of my profits without, dipping into too much of my winnings, and I can still have more contracts and be able to milk more of the move. So same exact thing here. We had a big push out on this candle, a pullback, an inside bar on very low volume, held the previous support here. I'm sorry, previous resistance, which is now acting as support, and then we have a nice move above on this current day here at 515. We'll see if it can get to 67.70. I'll keep my eye on this once again, but we do have our EMA there, and then our our MAs, which are 200 and our 50, are much higher than BABA. So let's keep an eye on PDD. This is why I've been really, I've been talking about it a lot. PDD and BABA are probably some of my favorite charts in terms of them getting back to these weekly levels, because the 70 is a weekly level. So that was it for those two. Let's take a look now at Disney. I think I had Google as well, and I think I had a SPY one. I had a lot. I've been swinging a lot, so let's check those out as well, and then yeah, we'll conclude it there. So next chart is actually going to be SHOP. This was a trade I took the following day, so this was a Friday, and something I actually regret. I don't know why I did it. I was up by like 15% or so, and I pulled my stop to break even when I had no reason to. And I ended up just taking a break-even trade. I didn't make any money on it. I didn't trim anything, or I might have trimmed like a couple contracts, but I didn't make any money on it. That was significant. Had I just taken the 0 DTE, I would have been up a ton. But this is essentially what I was looking at. So if you guys see, they had earnings here. They actually performed pretty well, but the entire move up into the 65.13 weekly resistance zone was all low volume. It was decreasing the entire way. So instantly that should be a red flag for everybody that there is not a lot of interest in pushing this higher, right? It's being pushed up, and you're starting to see buyers exhaust or just kind of lose those fumes that it takes to get over a certain level. How that level obviously was 65.13. We do know that now. But I wasn't too, fond of just immediately going short at 65. One, because I wasn't sure when this would end. You want to get confirmation first that you're starting a downtrend or a potential reversal. That came right here. Sort of like a hanging man that we ended up seeing. But I still was just keeping it on the radar. And then what we ended up getting was this hammer here. And the reason that this was significant is we saw our first red day, and it pushed us under a pretty key spot. So I'll go ahead and just kind of live chart this. I was looking for this daily low here. It kind of lines up with this level here as well, 62.5. But let's make that red, right? And then you guys can see, once I start to label this out, that it was a very, very weak hammer candle that didn't push back into the, the highs of the previous trading range. Okay, so you guys can see very small spread hammer and very, very low volume. So instantly my thinking process is, okay, bulls were able to at least push it up, but it's still lack of interest, and they weren't able to get it above this previous day close right around here. And then they weren't able to, in my opinion, really even get close to even the open of this candle here or break it out of this wick here. So there was a pretty big, I wouldn't say it was a support, but it was a very weak attempt to get back into a high trading range. So I was looking for, on the next day, I was looking for it to get back into this zone, and essentially, if we go candle by candle, get a lower high versus this candle here on the hammer. So if we go to the 5, what was that day, 512? Yeah, it's right here. Literally what I was looking for, to a T, right? So we ended up getting an open here, okay? And then, of course, it broke down, had a nice bounce, pulled back up, and I think I ended up taking it here, and then I took it here as well. But if we actually think about it, right, this candle right here is lower than this candle here, if we think in daily terms. So if we just treat it as a candle by candle analysis, once we opened here and we obviously didn't push above, this is already a lower high versus this candle. And as we know, this red zone is a failure to get back into this trading zone up here. I'll just kind of mark it real quick. right? That's the goal of these hammer buyers. They wanted to push it back into this high, and they had very weak volume and a very weak attempt to do so. Typically, you're going to see a further sell-off to incentivize more buyers to jump in. We didn't see that. Now this candle opened and it instantly sold off. So now we know that this candle is already threatening a lower high versus this candle. And that's really where I ended up taking the trade. I don't know if I took it here. Let's take a look. Yeah, so I took this right off the open, so it took it at 656. And this is probably why I didn't feel super comfortable in this trade. I should have waited for that secondary lower high intraday. But you guys can see I got in 519, 60 puts at 0.76. I instantly was a green trade, 5%. I did take profits, so yeah, took profits at 85. Of course, went to like 11 and then 15%. And this is where I really regret this trade because I moved my stop loss to entry. I had no reason to do so. I feel like I could have just risked the high or the opening candle, knowing that we were still lower than the previous hammer. Hopefully that makes sense. A lot of people don't think about charts in that way, right? Like candle by candle, you can technically have higher lows or lower highs, and it's very important to think about that in terms of risk as well, especially if you're taking further dated contracts, which I did. So me stopping out here, I really don't know why I did that, but we can just evaluate the chart itself. I think I got in somewhere around here, and then it pushed back up, and then this is where I got stopped. I think it had to have been on this wick right here. Let's go ahead and mark it. Really, what I should have done is just risk this up here. There's no reason. I should have been able to go a little bit red on the position because, as we know, this open is lower than this candle here. It's lower than the close still as well. So, I mean, if anything, I should have let this come back up, and I should have added to my position right here very comfortably. Once again, though, we had just come off of a huge BABA win, a huge PDD win. I think I took Google and AMD a couple days before. So those things get in your head as a trader. That's why it's so important when you get at the desk, you kind of lock in and remember to follow your trade plan, keep your emotions tame. Every trade is a new trade. Don't think about your P&L, right? If there's something presents itself, just follow that plan. So, I mean, this is something that's good to review. So, I mean, this should have been an ad, and I should have been willing to risk a break above this level. But the sweet spot, too, open, pushes down. We get a bounce off 61.29. How I had 61.29. Oh, this is why I hate Webull, guys. Sorry, this is going to take a second. I have to pull this up. 61.29. Here we are. It was simply this level here. It was a break, pullback, and then a breakout again. So very simple. Nothing too crazy. Of course, we haven't really traded in this range too much, so you can always just use your candle lows, your daily lows, or highs if you're trying to go short or whatever. But very simple bounce on that, to be honest. And I could have gone long there for sure, especially 0DTE. I'm sure a ton of people made money here. But we were looking to go long-term short. The stock looks very weak, especially with good earnings. You had the power gap up, and it's low volume, and they're not breaking over that 63 or what was it, 65 level, and you're continually making new lows on the candles. So this was another sweet spot to go right here. You have a high, breaks down, it bounces, very good bounce. I mean, but if you go look at the volume, it doesn't look very high. We can back test it on the 15, but it pushes up right into our same exact red zone that we were looking for, and a lower high, right? This high right here is lower than this one. Didn't close anywhere near it. You guys can clearly see the wick here, and I'm sure if we go to like a 15, we can take a look at it real quick. 512. Yeah, so I mean that's your confirmation right there. Very, very easy spot. We had a gravestone doji, so could have just gone short on the 15, risked the 15-minute candle high, which is what I should have done. I should have added to my position. I shouldn't have even cut in the first place, but this is a re-add. And could have gotten from what, 62.25, we'll just say, all the way back down to 61.29. And that would have been a fantastic trade. But you live and you learn, not a big deal. It's about, sometimes for these trades, it's about being right and then studying why you're right, even if your execution is just a tad off. Know why it was a tad off. Be okay. Try to remove your ego as much as possible, and be okay with not getting things perfect. We obviously want to strive for that, but right? It's okay to miss on certain things. Just know why you missed and then make evaluations and really try to tune it up the next time you see this trade present itself. So that was SHOP. And I think we have, oh boy, I think we have two more. I took BABA one more time, and then I took Google. So let's get those out of the way, and then I promise this video will be done. Okay, so last few were Google, and then another ad on BABA. You guys already know why I took BABA, but I will show the trade as well. But this was from same day as SHOP. So SHOP, I remember I ended up taking, I got stopped, and then I kind of just took the rest of the day to myself. I think I ended up taking a SPY trade. I'll post that in here as well if I end up finding it. I think a couple people ended up hitting 1,000% on it that took it 0 DTE. I hit 120%. This might have been an entirely different day. I'm not too sure, but this was the only trade I believe I took after that SHOP trade. So I was looking to add BABA again and then potentially Google 119 for this week here. BABA, this is the exact same chart I showed you guys, right, where we had this big, large candle. We had an inside bar that pulled back down into our previous, resistance, which is now acting as support, as well as the 9 EMA. So we had a pullback into the EMA on pretty low volume. There was only an hour until close, so I assumed volume wouldn't be too drastic and change that print. So I ended up taking the Google contract. Obviously, you guys can see the gains here, as well as BABA. And then I ended up opening this today. BABA ended up going 51%. And then Google, I think this went as high as 40. I ended up closing it at like 30 or 40%, something like that. But oh, there we go. Closed last Google swing 18. So I actually did not get that high. So right around 20, which isn't bad. But if we go take a look too, I ended up taking these trades at 12:06. So if we go back to the chart here, I ended up taking it on this day here, 5:12. Obviously today, 5:15, we printed a pretty nasty candle here. We'll see how this ends up going. But first 5 minutes or so, we'll just take a look at that. I'm sorry, not the first 5. We'll look at where I ended up taking the trade. Well, actually, let's go back to the daily. Once again, the Webull glitch here. 1 second, guys. Okay, so what I was really looking for on this day was for it to hold this right here. If you guys don't know, right, we have the candle open and then the candle close on the bullish days. So I wanted to see this 512 candle really hold above 116.50 for a potential continuation. If things really got bad, I was looking for, maybe a close under this level and then an add at a later time at 115.12. It's looking like that's starting to shape up moving forward, but at the time, right, we were holding above 116.50, which was the close of 511. So now if we can tie this back into that 5-minute chart, should make a little bit more sense as to why I took it. So going into the end of the day, I ended up taking it at 12 o'clock, which is the final hour. List closes at 14, so I took it at 13. Right here. So final hour, you guys can see we were consolidating pretty nicely above that 116.50. Of course, we had this breakdown under it, pulled back above, we made a new high, pulled down, and this was all essentially, if we take a look at it, a higher low that we were kind of holding a trend line on. The consolidation didn't really see a break below this low here or this low, or even obviously our 116.50 level. So I felt pretty confident that the fact that we would close above in that final hour above the previous day, right? So of course we get into the position and we get a nice rally into the close. I think those contracts right before the close went like 15-20%, but this was nothing too crazy, guys. Of course, if we tie it back into that, let's actually do this because this is getting me pretty mad. We'll go adjusted for now. Big day like this, where we have this big candle and then you have a gap up, you expect some pullback. We didn't get it on that second day, so I mean, really, I was hoping for this, like I said, this close to hold going into the final hour, and then really looking for another push back up because I think the chart itself has more room up to this right here, 116.72, and then of course you have that potential, in my opinion, for like this 119, potentially like 120, and then of course if this thing goes crazy, you could look for that 122. But I liked how that candle, like I said, and that it was final hour, it was holding above the previous day close. The consolidation was really, really nice, and you really weren't seeing a drastic sell-off. So I felt comfortable just taking a few contracts overnight. Um, and if you guys can take a look here now, just reset this. This morning was pretty nice. Of course, we did have a gap down, so I ended up opening up on those contracts, I think down like 15-20%. I didn't take any ads on them because I was so light size, but you got this nice rally on high volume, which ended up pushing above our 117.92 target, broke pretty much all the range that we were in prior, and then I ended up closing out somewhere around this range, like the 118s. Like I said, I only got like 20-25%, but still a very good trade. I definitely could have added down here. I didn't really have anything to base risk off of. I could have, of course, done pre-market low, but that would have broken my setup and something I didn't want to do because, of course, I was only trying to trade the close from this day here. So good trade there. And then BABA, we can look at that one more time. BABA, same situation where we had this pullback down into this green zone. If we go to our daily chart, you guys should remember what it looked like. I'll just reinvigorate that, where we had this big breakout. It hit our resistance and pulled back on low volume. We had an inside bar, and then it caught previous resistance, now support for a second time on a low volume sell. Just figured it was a good RR trade. Remember, we are in that weekly inverse head and shoulders as well, so continuation felt very probable. Tape was very, very clean as well on that Friday and very strong. I'm sorry, not on Friday, but this day here, Thursday. And obviously the sell-off, everything that was getting brought down, there was buyers on every sell-off. So I felt pretty comfortable with that trade. Now, 5 minute, I should have held this a little bit longer, but yeah, took that swing. It broke down, still held within the confines of, where I ended up taking the trade, which I took it somewhere down here. So I was still green the entire way down, but a nice rally back and broke this level here, which was the opening wick. So created a higher high and then pushed all the way to our target once again. So this was where we took our initial trade, right? Our target. We're hitting at a secondary time, so we're absorbing a lot of this supply, and then of course after hours is now above. We'll see if pre-market can hold above this as well, and I think this provides another opportunity for a zone-to-zone trade from 88.50, I would say. I would just round up all the way up to 92. So we'll see how this ends up looking tomorrow. But yeah, that was essentially it for all my trades last week in terms of swings and some of the big winners. I did have a SPY trade as well. I'll go ahead and throw that in here. It was a very, very simple trade. I think a big sell-off came and a lot of people were extremely bearish without looking at the higher time frames. And I'll show you guys, but I think on the hourly, it was just a simple inverse head and shoulders. So I'll do that last one and then go ahead and wrap this up, guys.